In a troubling new chapter of global migration, reports have emerged that a growing number of Indian families are abandoning their children at the borders of the United States in a desperate bid to secure American citizenship. This unsettling trend, which has come under sharp scrutiny by the Trump administration, is now prompting a sweeping crackdown on immigration policy and enforcement, raising ethical, legal, and humanitarian concerns across the board. The desperate path to the American dream. Between 2022 and 2025, U.S. Customs and Border Protection apprehended 1,656 unaccompanied minors from India at the southern and northern borders of the United States. Many of these children, often hailing from rural districts in Indian states such as Gujarat and Punjab, were sent alone across the borders by their families. Their journey, sometimes guided by smugglers, sometimes unaccompanied entirely, reflects a calculated gamble rooted in the belief that U.S. immigration policy is more favorable to minors. According to immigration experts, this strategy hinges on the assumption that unaccompanied children are less likely to be deported and more likely to qualify for asylum or special immigration relief. Once granted legal status, it is believed that these children can eventually sponsor their parents and other family members for entry into the United States. It's a high-stakes tactic driven by poverty, lack of opportunities, and the powerful lure of the American dream. A sharp turn. Trump's immigration crackdown. Former President Donald Trump, now seeking re-election with a renewed focus on hardline immigration policy, has placed this issue at the center of his political radar. His administration has responded by introducing a raft of new enforcement measures that target both undocumented immigrants and the systems that allow children to remain in the country. One of the most controversial measures has been the use of home visits and DNA testing to verify the identity and familial ties of unaccompanied minors placed with sponsors in the U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement, ICE, working in conjunction with the Department of Health and Human Services, has launched investigations into approximately 450,000 cases of children placed under sponsorship during the Biden administration. Officials claim these steps are necessary to prevent child trafficking and ensure the minors' safety, but critics argue they are designed to intimidate immigrant families and slow down reunification efforts. Moreover, ICE has increased its efforts to track down and deport not only undocumented minors, but also their adult sponsors, many of whom are relatives residing illegally in the U.S. Under newly adopted rules, sponsors must now provide extensive documentation, including income statements, proof of relationship, and legal status, which advocacy groups say severely delays or halts the placement process for vulnerable children. Executive Order to End Birthright Citizenship. In a highly controversial move, President Trump signed Executive Order 104-160 on January 20, 2025, aiming to terminate the long-standing policy of birthright citizenship for children born in the U.S. to undocumented immigrants or individuals on temporary visas. The order directly challenges the 14th Amendment of the U.S. Constitution, which guarantees citizenship to all persons born or naturalized in the United States. Though multiple federal courts have temporarily blocked the implementation of the executive order, legal experts warn that the debate could reach the U.S. Supreme Court and potentially reshape immigration law in fundamental ways. For Indian families banking on U.S.-born children as a pathway to citizenship, the stakes could not be higher. The fallout for Indian families. These policy shifts have already begun to have tangible consequences for Indian immigrants. In February 2025, a U.S. military aircraft repatriated 104 Indian migrants back to India in a coordinated deportation effort. The Indian government, facing mounting pressure from Washington, has reportedly committed to repatriating up to 18,000 undocumented Indian nationals, many of whom had overstayed visas or entered illegally. The emotional toll on families is devastating. Children sent across borders with the hope of building a better future are now finding themselves detained in overcrowded shelters or returned to countries they barely remember. Meanwhile, families back home are often left indebted, having paid thousands of dollars to smugglers or middlemen who promised them a path to legal residency in America. A complex humanitarian crisis. This growing crisis sits at the intersection of poverty, policy, and international politics. While the Trump administration justifies its actions in terms of national security and legal integrity, critics argue that these policies disproportionately target vulnerable populations and erode America's moral standing as a haven for the oppressed and persecuted. Immigration advocates are calling for a more humane approach, one that recognizes the desperation driving families to make such difficult choices, while still addressing legitimate concerns about border integrity and child safety. The broader Indian diaspora, which has traditionally been seen as a successful and law-abiding immigrant community in the U.S., is now grappling with a complex reckoning. As immigration policy becomes increasingly politicized in the run-up to the 2024 presidential election, the fate of these abandoned children and the ideals that define American identity remain precariously balanced on the edge of legality and compassion. In the words of one border official, "These children didn't come here to break the law. They came because their families believed America would give them a chance. What we do next will define who we are."